Um, it is 1:00. We've got some amazing folks from Southern Oregon who just can't quit being rad about food systems. So Abigail reached out to me a little bit ago and said, "Did you know that Klamath Grown and Josephine County Farmer Collective are working on doing some collaborative purchasing and moving product from region to region?" I was like, "Well, no, I didn't know." So I asked Sarah and Carrie to come on and share with us what they're working on, how they started working on it, and maybe a little bit about where their stumbling blocks are, or let them ask this group some questions, because I know some of you have also done some food movement from region to region. So that is our project for the day. And then after that, we'll take some burning questions if we have them, and also do some introductions if we have some time. So I can't remember, Sarah and Carrie, which one of you was going to speak first.
I think it would be best if Sarah went first, to offer a real general overview, and then I'll get into our nuts and bolts.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Sydney. So I am Sarah Akbari, and I work with Klamath Grown, which is a food hub in Klamath County. We're located in Klamath Falls, but serve the whole county. And we operate an online market. So it's basically just an online farmers market where we sell local food and do a lot of other things to support our local producers, and have like a local food marketing campaign to promote local food in the community. And with them, I'm an AmeriCorps, a RARE member, which is Resource Assistance for Rural Environments. And it's a program based out of the University of Oregon. So coming on with Klamath Grown, I had very specific projects that they wanted me to work on. And one of those was a regional procurement toolkit that they wanted me to create. And at first it sounded very intimidating. I haven't done a lot of work in procurement or with me talking with distributors. And I am new to the food hub world. And Klamath Grown itself started as an online market, but closed down last year and has just reopened as a nonprofit in the fall. And then we just opened our online market in December. And the reason that this regional work was on my work plan with Klamath Grown was because as an organization, they wanted to be able to have connections across the region where they could be getting products that we don't have access to here in Klamath. That's definitely one of the challenges that I've come across in doing this work, is that a lot of distributors don't go as far as Klamath Falls. They'll stop in like Medford or Roseburg or Bend, but Klamath itself is quite isolated as a place, and a lot of distribution routes just don't come this far, unfortunately. And so that's definitely been a challenge that I've come up in meeting with other distributors and food hubs across the state. So with this project was to create this regional capacity building toolkit. So I'd love to, let's see if I can share my screen here. Perfect. So with this toolkit, it is, let's see, there we go. This Google document that I created, and here it says, the goal is to increase our community's capacity and increase access to local food. So by making connections with regional partners, we could bring a wider variety of food here while supporting regional producers. So the goal was to create a toolkit, a document that could be passed off to our market manager in the future, that he can use to go back and find different routes and distributors, their contact information, where they go, mileage, commercial kitchens, producers that we can connect with. Like for example, something that we have coming up is a harvest box. So that'll be kind of like a CSA, but of all the farmers that are part of our online market will contribute to the box. And so we want to be able to have connections with other producers across the region when there are gaps that we need filled. So like one thing I did was I just started meeting with people. I talked with Abigail Blinn about this project a lot, and with Kiara and some other folks from other food hubs that do this type of work, and just put together different routes and distributors. There are some people on here that are in Klamath, but go over to like the Rogue Valley to pick things up, or it was a lot of like just piecing together where people are going, meeting with a lot of people, figuring out, is there a potential if this florist is going over to the Rogue Valley that they could maybe pick up a box of produce for us or something from Fry Family Farm, just ways to make it a lot easier for us. And so we're mostly focused on the regions of, Rogue Valley and then Central Oregon. And then I also just listed out various distribution centers and hubs where we could potentially be able to store our products. And I think at this moment, it seems like I don't know if we're big enough to, or have that much of a need where we would need to actually have like a full pallet space at Fry Family Farm or something like that. But it still was like, I wanted to get that information for once we are at that point. And thankfully, our market manager does go over to Ashland on a pretty regular basis. And so he's been able to be the one bringing back a lot of those products for us, or we've been shipping. I added produce, information about storage and food safety, certifications, and then just various potential producers that could help us fill those gaps in the future. But I think the main challenges have been finding distributors that come this far over to Klamath. And then another big gap here is the lack of commercial kitchens. So that was a section I wanted to include in here, was regionally available kitchens. And we actually will have a kitchen opening up soon. I haven't actually met with the woman yet that is opening it up, but hopefully that will be something that's available, because that's definitely another big challenge here, is that a lot of producers aren't able to easily scale up because there isn't easy access to a commercial kitchen. And that's another goal for Klamath Grown in the future, is to have something like that available. But I listed out regionally available, and then just calculated costs for mileage. And then, our just the different guidelines that we have. But another kind of challenge that I've been thinking about, and I'd love to get feedback on this, was something that actually Abigail brought up when she was reviewing this toolkit, was to have a section about like, and I think this is going to be a bigger conversation among the Klamath Grown staff and team and our board, but just in general, what are our guidelines around, like fair labor laws, and what kind of, do farms need to have a certain certification, or do they need to be, it was just kind of a general, just thinking about what are our guidelines when it comes to where we source. And even when, as Klamath Grown, when we're promoting different restaurants or farmers, how much do they need to be sourcing local for us to add them to our local food directory and things like that. So I think that's another question, is just how food hubs have come up with those requirements and guidelines, and what it looks like to maybe brainstorm that as a team. But I think it's also, since I'm pretty new to this regional work, I'd just love to get, if anyone has other, recommendations or thoughts around this, because it is something that like Christy and I have talked about, and that I've been talking about with other people, but I think just being also in a more isolated area, it can be difficult. So I would love to chat more. And if Carrie wants to share, she can feel free. But
Sarah, I just want to say it's really exciting to hear you talk about having conversations or starting to work on having conversations about how to operationalize your hub's values as you reach out into other regions. I think that's a really important thing to be bringing to this piece of work. And then the other thing that came top of mind as you were going through that for me is, the folks on the North Coast have been doing some of this region to region work for a while, and it would be absolutely worth talking to the Food Roots folks, Food Web folks, Kristen Penner and Ken Henson, who's on this call as well. They've learned a lot along the way, both about sharing infrastructure and what makes it hard. They, like they have sort of a one in, one out kind of route. And it seems very simple, like we're all doing the same thing. We should all be able to get on the same truck. And there's a lot of very complex collaboration that goes into getting everybody onto the same truck. So it would very much be worth your time to have that conversation.
Definitely. Thank you. And I see Ken said if this was something that could be shared with the group. And that's actually something that's been interesting that's come up in this conversation is that people have been asking if this is something that could be available, because at first it was just something that was internal to Klamath Grown. But I think that's another interesting point is if people feel like this is something that could be useful to them. I know Carrie and I have been kind of working on a document together as well, but if some kind of toolkit like this could be available, and we've talked about putting it on Klamath Grown's website, or maybe having some kind of like a portal that has that available. But it's something that we thought was going to just be a Klamath Grown document, but it sounds like there's a lot of interest in this topic among food hubs. So
it's really amazing. And I could see, I don't know the logistics of making this happen. And so Shin, you can jump all over me if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I could see something like this being housed on our hub site in a way that we can continue to add to it. The problem with all of these kinds of documents is when the energy for gathering the information goes away, then the document becomes dead and lifeless and then eventually becomes useless. And so how to keep that alive. So before, say, Shin and I embark on a project of making a live version of this that lives on OCFSN, we need to figure out how to make sure it stays lively and useful. But absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I would say even like phase one of this could just be if that link is okay to share now, giving us the read-only access to that and us just having that live on the landing page for the Food Hub for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's the goal, is to have it be a living document that the market manager and me and whoever else is involved are constantly updating and using. And it was really cool to see, even when I was just getting it started, I could see our market manager was in there already getting little bits of information and reaching out to people. It's been really exciting to do this type of work and be able to make those connections and see other people very interested in collaborating.
Can I say something really fast too about this?
Absolutely.
First of all, Sarah just did a wonderful job. She really took this project and ran with it. And also just expanding on what she was saying about more public use of this document. Other things that have come up as Sarah and I have had conversations with people, just even locally in Klamath, like the Klamath Basin, people saying, oh, can we use this? Like different businesses that are maybe interested in making more of those like regional and statewide connections and sourcing food or just even sourcing from each other. I don't know. There's been conversations that have really had light bulb moments for both of us where we were really thinking of this as an internal document. And then I think a lot of different types of businesses in Klamath Falls, if we figure out a way to get this information out there, are going to use this information, which is really cool and something we hadn't thought of before. So I'm excited to see phase 2 of this.
Yeah, Katie, it seems almost like it would be super useful for Klamath Grown to have it public on its website for all of your folks as you start building your resource list for your website. Cool. It's great, Sarah. Let's get Carrie in, and then I think we can have a great big distribution discussion because we're having a great big distribution discussion in the chat right now.
Yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share today. Being a part of this group has been extremely valuable to help support our food network in our area. So before I got into like a lot of details about how we are moving forward with regional food distribution, I just wanted to try to answer the question like, why or what created the need to do this? And although it was sort of a personal goal for myself, Rogue Valley Food System Network held an event in Southern Oregon called the Food Solutions Summit in March. And many of you were there, and there were people from all different stages and functions of the food system. So we had healthcare workers, we had nurses, we had school dietitians, we had farmers and fisheries and truck drivers and ranchers. I mean, we were all there in one room, and then we broke into work groups. And then at the end of the day, when we compared notes, every single function of that food system network had distribution and transportation as an issue. It was the common denominator for every single level, every single scale and geography. So I kind of just, after that, we started meeting. Sarah and I met to talk about how we could move food from Josephine County to Klamath. And then Aaron and I and Bobby met in Roseburg and started talking about Umpqua. And then I met with Amber at Fry Farm and started to just have those discussions about how we can make it happen and what in reality can happen. So at that point, we just started documenting all the details. And so that's kind of the document I'm going to share with you today. And this is not as pretty as Sarah's because it is, it's a living document. It's just constantly being updated until like I was up till 1 a.m. last night working on it. So there's no graphics. It just documents a lot of details. And these are questions that we have had to ask and get answers for so that we can work through all the logistical details. So initially, Sarah and I, started this document, and then Abigail and Allison and Megan at a Greater Applegate, really, and I are moving forward with putting this plan into effect. So we hope this group will grow, but that's our team right now. So the first thing we did was try to identify the different markets and what each market needs, because it varies widely and it changes constantly. So I just created a list like, here's what I need, here's what I'm looking for. And then I asked Sarah to plug in what their market needed, and Megan's going to do the same for Applegate. And I'm hoping today at the end of my presentation that you all will plug in. I've given you all editor access to this document. So this will become a useful document for everyone to list what you need as a place to start. And we're just focusing on food, cut flowers, and animal sourced fiber to start with. So then we started digging into the details of logistics, like what locations have on-site refrigeration and freezers. So moving it from place to place is one thing, but then when you get there and it's 100 degrees outside, where are you going to leave it so that it doesn't perish, and that to make sure that it stays food safe. So, and then you've got to figure out how you're going to order between your food hubs or your markets, because if we use an online marketplace, but they take 10%. So 3% for credit card processing and 7% to the online marketplace. So if we're trying to find a way to exchange, ordering process outside of that, and yet still use a centralized inventory that through our online marketplace. And then you have to ask, like, how are you going to manage the billing and the accounting? And then one of the things that came up with our discussions with Applegate Market is they want more food at their market, but they don't want it to be in competition with their farmers that are already there. So, and that changes every week. So that means you have to have regular conversation, like, what do you have? And what are my farmers bringing? And what supplementary food can I bring in from the other food hubs and fit it within this timeline so that we can get it and distribute it and have it there during the market. And then I'll talk about vehicles in a minute, but when we figure out, like, we have a vehicle now, and if we're sharing it with other markets, how are you going to keep track of it when it's all in the truck together? Are you going to have different containers? Are you going to color code labels? How are you going to keep track of that? So then you have to take a look at, like, when is the food needed at a certain location? And this is like the first step to really build that route, that distribution route. And things that are factoring in are everybody's CSA pack days and distribution days, food pantry distributions, food bank distribution days. So all those things are starting to, like, be documented so that you can begin to build your distribution route. And then we were looking at, what are we going to use to transport this food? Right now, it's my own personally owned vehicle, and that's what I've been using for 3 years. I did look at, like, renting something this year. I looked at U-Haul, Vans, Enterprise, Home Depot. They all have, like, those vans, cargo vans you can rent. And they run about $300 a day. Some include insurance, some don't. Some have unlimited mileage, some don't. Sometimes you have to pay per mile. So those are all factors, especially if you're going to start writing a grant to ask for funding for distribution of food. You need to know those numbers up front. And then we have a local resource. Siskiyou Sustainable Co-op has been closed down for a couple years, and they have a refrigerated truck that has been unused for a couple years. So just recently, we pursued whether we could put that back into service, and Rogue Valley Food System Network just received notice that they have funding to buy that truck and put it into service. And that has been instrumental in helping connect our food hubs between the Josephine County Farm Collective and the Applegate Market. And then some other players that have fallen into place are, like, Josephine County Food Bank. They have their own refrigerated trucks, and they called me. They're like, hey, can we buy food from you? I'm like, yeah, but I don't know, like, how to transport it to you. And they're like, we'll come get it. We have our own trucks. School districts have their own transportation trucks too. So you start to just document, like, who's got a truck and where is it located? What is its normal route? So if you can fit into their route easily, it's much easier to accomplish the goal. So now that we have this refrigerated truck, we can start planning the route. So where is it going to live? Because when I met with Allison and Megan, even though they're like the closest city to me for food distribution, it's still like 112-mile round trip. And they need it on Mondays for their food pantry, and they need it Wednesday nights for their market. And I need it Wednesday days and Fridays to pick up for my producers. So that means if I drive to Applegate, I either have to leave my own personal vehicle there for 3 days and do without it, or I need to have a route that's circular, that starts and ends at my farm. So we're still working through those details, but I think what we've decided is Wednesdays, after I run all my CSA route deliveries, I'm going to load the truck back up and take it to Applegate. And I'm just going to stay there until their market's over, because that truck is their refrigeration. They don't have like a walk-in cooler, a permanent one. So it's always going to have food in it. So I won't be like taking food and dropping it off. So I have to stay there for 3 hours and then drive back home. And that's the only way I can keep my personal vehicle at home during the week. But that also means that I'm kind of on call. Like if they have a need for it, then I've got to like go to their location and meet their needs too. So it takes a lot of collaboration to make this happen. And then we're still working on a lot of details, like what's the insurance going to cost, fuel, maintenance. Maud Powell told us it averages $1,000 annually. But again, that was like pre-pandemic, so it could be more. Does it have a lift gate? Equipment that you need to load and offload, is that going to be provided by each driver, each food hub, or does it stay with the truck? Do you need a pallet jack? Do you need safety cones? You know, yeah, I'm thinking about my route, and I know that I cannot drive a big delivery truck down a couple driveways that I have to make deliveries to. So those are just things you have to think about. It may not be the best solution for every distribution route. Is it gonna accommodate home deliveries? And then I'm still trying to find out, do I need a special license? Like those vehicles are rated differently based on their weight. And sometimes I might have to go through a scale weigh too, in between food hubs, where you have to weigh what's in your truck. And then if all those things happen, then you got to figure out, like, if you have spring and summer crops in the same truck, they don't hold at the same temperatures. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to keep your lettuce cold enough that it doesn't wilt, but not so cold that your zucchinis and tomatoes aren't going to get frost damage? So you kind of have to figure that out too. And then you got to figure out like how to secure it inside the truck. So when you're driving, it's not sliding all over. If I'm carrying buckets of water with cut flowers, we need to like build some kind of shelf in there with the bucket holes cut out. So that will be secure. So those are just like the ongoing list of details we're working through, and some of it's like falling into place. And I feel like every time we figure something out, another question comes up. And then we're looking at geographical areas, because after that Food Solutions Summit, when we all sat down, it just seemed like this huge hurdle to try to find one route that will meet everyone's needs. And I think what I've decided, is you got to start with this core. And for me, you have to look at who's ready to make that step, who's ready to make it happen, who has the resources to make it happen, and where's the demand. And for us, it's just Applegate and the Farm Collective. The Farm Collective supports this map on the right. We support 6 counties in Oregon and 2 California, Northern California. So that means we're taking food from producers within those counties, but right now we're just distributing to Josephine and Jackson County. So it just made sense for us to start small and then start to grow that out. So as our phase 1, we're going to just connect with Applegate. And then hopefully our phase 2 will expand to Medford and Klamath Falls. I did meet with Amber, and we were in agreement that we're just not at a place volume-wise to start working together. If you saw that list at the beginning of my presentation of 10 things that we needed, and Amber had like 4 of those because I was getting some things from other farms. She's like, it's not cost effective for her to drive to my county for just blueberries or just, a couple items. So then your cost factor starts to fall into place. So we need to grow our volume at the Farm Collective before we start connecting with Medford. And then a lot of this is about building relationships. So, for example, the Farm Collective has 22 farms on board. As Sarah mentioned, we have 22 local farms that bring their food and products to my farm, Daily Blessings Farm, and we pack it all together in a CSA and we sell it on an online marketplace. At that point, it goes out to distribution. We have 5 more farms waiting to be a part of that. And one of those, I just happen to know, goes to the Murphy Market. And I have another farm in Applegate who needs to drive all the way to my farm. But I just said, drop it off with Gather Bakery at the Murphy Market because she comes to me next. So it's just learning everybody's routes to save money, basically, and make it work. And I just called Hope Mountain Nursery. They're one of our farms as well, because I know she drives to Klamath Falls. I'm like, hey, I know you go like once a month to Klamath Falls and they just deliver plants. I'm like, could you backhaul food from Klamath Falls? We'd love to get some like beef and potatoes from Katie. So we're having those conversations, and a lot of that just comes from learning the needs of all your producers. The other factor is you need some kind of tool to help with build your routes. And I'm just going to share this. This is what I just want to know. Can you see my Harvey screen? Lindsay, can you see that? You're the
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks.
You can see it.
Okay. 1 second. So once you start making deliveries, it can be a little overwhelming. Like, what's the most cost efficient way to do that? And this is just what's available to me through my online marketplace, which we use Harvey. So this is my deliveries for tomorrow. So all I do, I can add more trucks. If I add more trucks, I can divvy up all of these stops to different trucks on the right. But I just build my route and it creates a map for me. And then I can offload, I can export it into a spreadsheet. And that is the most effective way for me to just go from point to point. So I'm going to squeeze Grants Pass in here, right there. And then Cave Junction is my last stop. And now I can just export that, and until now I know all my stops from start to finish. So there are lots of different tools. Road Warrior is an app. Route for Me is another app. I think Abigail, you use a couple of mapping tools too. So it would be nice to add to this list. If you have some other suggestions, please add them in. And then our last phase 3, we'd love to connect with the coast. Brookings, I feel like when we were part of the Southern Oregon Food Alliance, we were talking to Kathleen and Otterbees a lot, and I haven't heard from the coast for quite a while. So I'd love to start moving food to the coast and back again, because one of our farms is actually in Happy Camp. So they're actually not far from that coastal route anyways. And then the last part, which is probably the most important, is just building our list, a regional route map. So identifying all the different markets that would want food or offer to sell food, the hours, day that they would need it, an address, and whether they have refrigeration available on site. And I'm going to ask you all to either find your market on this list or add it so we can all use this document. So I have quite a few on here. Abigail and I built this for the most part. but it's missing a lot of information that would help us. So unless there's something else, I can answer questions, but I'd like to just take 5 or 7 minutes and let you guys fill in the blanks.
Can you drop the link to this in the chat, Carrie?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
while folks are filling that out, I wanted to ask you, what does all of this distribution effort do for Josephine County Farm Collective? Like, why specifically are you, Carrie, involved? Is there a market that you're wanting to reach for your specific products? Is it helping you grow your revenues? Like, what's driving you to take on this big effort?
Well, that's such a big question. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Farm Collective, you know, we kind of formed out of the pandemic. When I moved to Oregon in 2017 and became a farmer, I just wanted to like grow food and feed my community and provide educational programs. And then I realized how quickly small farmers are really struggling. And a lot of that has to do with the rural geographic location and limitations for sales outlets. And then I started to have some success and realize like we're all driving the same route. You start to get to know other farmers. You're like, we're all going to the same stores or the same restaurants, the same places to sell our product. And it was very competitive and it was tense. And then so I started selling online. I started building my own clientele, finding my niche. And then the pandemic started. And when all those markets closed, I had it set up already. So I just reached out to my closest farmers in the area and I'm like, hey, do you want to go in together and contribute to this CSA? And I have it all set up. And so it started evolving from there as a way to provide more access of food, locally grown food. Ours is mostly organic, to our communities. Josephine County in particular has a large percentage. I think we're at 26% poverty level income, and 50% of our population is either under 18 or senior citizen, over 65. And those are pretty high low income or fixed income categories, demographics. So we grew through the pandemic. Actually, we went from 4 farms to 25 last year. And then I pooled the group and I'm like, hey, what do you want to do? Because I'm doing this all voluntarily still. And I feel like we were at a point where we needed to make some business model decisions. And so we converted to a nonprofit organization and we started applying for grants to help increase access of locally grown food to our community, but also support the economic viability of our local producers. And so we're doing that. We have a lot of first-time farmers. I've kind of like tiered our farms. We have this like group of mentoring going on. So we have 3 or 4 big farms that carry a lot of the volume of our CSA. And we all kind of cross paths and we share a community booth at the Cave Junction Farmers Market. I take everybody's product and sell it all in one booth. And my farm, my pack house here is the central point for all their orders. Their produce comes here. And then we pack it once a week. And then I drive out and deliver it to all of our health centers, our hospitals, there's businesses, restaurants, and make home deliveries too. So that's kind of where we're at now. We're still really struggling for funding, but you know, at least this year we have some local food purchase funding that's helping. We can buy at a livable wage, you know, from our farms. and still serve it to our community. So that's making a huge difference. We just, need to start finding other ways to cover like operating costs and salaries, if, so we can keep going. So the building's done. And so it's exciting. That's kind of where we're at.
It's super cool to see you. We've been talking for a while, and seeing where you are right now and like what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about moving food is really fun to see. Shelly Bowerman had a random question in the chat. She's asking if there is a truck coming from Grants Pass or Roseburg to North Eugene, if anybody knows if that's happening. So we'll do a quick, what's going on with distribution here? And so if anybody knows that, please drop it in the chat. And are there questions in this group for Sarah or Carrie? Or do Sarah and Carrie have questions for this group? I saw on Joe dropped into the chat that Kristen Penner and Laura Anderson are both on this call as well. And I know both of them have done a lot of work with, getting food out of their regions into other regions. So they may have some answers. So what are the questions out here? Who's got questions? Did I hear somebody? We've got a full set of screens, so I can't see everybody's hands or anything. So just speak up if you've got one.
I kind of have a question.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna answer Shelly's question. I actually have 3 of my producers in Douglas County, and they often will bring me produce, but they'll backhaul stuff to you too. So if you want, we can connect with those two. So we're kind of moving product between Myrtle Creek and Grants Pass about once a week.
But not to Eugene.
We're not going that far yet.
But if we had someone, I mean, I'm wondering if Bohemia's not on here, huh? I wonder if we could work with her, because she's right between Eugene and Roseburg. That might be a good one to connect with. But she's not a food hub, she's a commercial kitchen. But anyway.
You know, Erin, Kim, I don't think anybody from Bohemia is on this call today, but I know Kim was really involved with some discussions around building out regional distribution, and they do have space. So I would wager that she would be open to some sort of cross-stocking conversation. So definitely reach out to her as you guys are doing this. And yes, Hannah, Kim is on vacation.
The little pod where her space is, there is a little store there too that I think it would be a good.
Yeah, she suggested that she would be interested in doing that. I know AgCom was in a conversation with her for a while trying to make it work, and it didn't work because of the various routes that everybody had to go. So nothing ever happened with it. So anyways, definitely have that conversation with Kim and or Carly.
Carrie, I'm curious if you ever figured out the SNAP thing. I just texted Christy when we got on this call about us getting set up for SNAP. But I'm curious if you ever got that figured out.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, we're doing a pop-up market this month just to see how it goes. And I want to get set up for SNAP because we have vendors using the kitchen. So we're inching our way into becoming a food hub. But for the grant program, for Market Link, you have to be a market. They won't fund a food hub, but we're kind of being both right now. So I'm curious if it's not.
Yeah, we're getting some SNAP is not going to happen quickly, but I know that Shelly was able to make SNAP happen. And actually, Shelly, I've wanted to reach out to you and have you come onto this group and talk to this group about how you made that happen, since there's so much struggle with SNAP.
It's only working for me because my own farm is authorized for SNAP and I have my own equipment. And that's the only reason why it's working for me, because I'm that point of contact. at all the markets and the online marketplace. And so, yeah, I run it through my farm. And then I pay the farm collective.
Let's do a snap session, maybe next for our next meeting. Let's do a snap session where we talk about specifically, I don't want to fully derail this distribution conversation around snaps, and I feel that we're getting ready to do that right now. So let's table that one for July's meeting. But I think maybe the way we can do that is we can have everybody who has SNAP, like Christy has SNAP under a specific whatever label of SNAP. I'm not saying that very well, delivery. And some of you have SNAP under other things, and start exploring what are the ways that we can make it work for those of us, so that we start understanding how people are being successful with SNAP. Because some of us have been more successful than others getting across that finish line. But I think that that is its own large cage match of a conversation. Other distribution. I know there's a bunch of folks on here for distribution. I got a yes, please on there. What are the other distribution? Abigail, looks like you're getting ready to say something.
Well, I'd be interested in people's thoughts about the idea of keeping a document alive and keeping it updated. And we talked about like creating a map and a logistics schedule and then having that continually updated. But like, what are people's experiences and in actually updating that, or is it still like kind of emerging for everybody?
Abigail, I met a lady that works for the county here that does GIS, and she's been making maps of all the farms and wineries and farmers markets. Like, we didn't even know she was doing it. So I have a meeting coming up with her, but I'm going to ask her if she would do that, because she's got like, that's her job.
Kristen Penner, do you want to say something about that? Because you've been sort of tooling around in this regional distribution thing for a long time.
Okay. Hey,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. This is all really relevant and timely. There's so many conversations flying around about distribution, not just with hubs, but with businesses that are struggling with the same issues that aren't tapped into this food hub network, like Portland Creamery, for instance. There's a lot of others that could be really strong players and help connect the dots. I think what's challenging is it's such a huge geographic area, and there's the tension between like the very local logistical level details that have to be sorted out for every connection, but this bigger piece and opportunity of all plugging in and like seeing all the data in one place. So I love it. I don't have an answer right this moment, but we do have, it seems like there's more funding that's kind of coming into place and into view that could help all of this. And I just think about how can we best leverage the resources that we have amongst us to organize ourselves. It goes back to, what does success look like, I think? What are those shared values and needs? So yeah, we're talking about that here at Equina Lab with our Central Coast Food Hub here, just now with some farmers, the meeting before this one, talking about that very thing. So I don't know, how can we keep it going? We used to have a distribution, like a side conversation that was sort of like a sub-working group of this group. So Sydney, I don't know, I'd look back to you for what your thoughts are, because you are in touch with more people more regularly across the state than I am.
Yeah, I think you put your finger on the sort of the struggle, which is we all want to see all the things and we want to see it on a map. And then we very quickly, to do our work, have to narrow our focus really tightly into our region and like all the really, really tiny relationships that are super tangled up and involve the needing the knowledge that Joe Bob only communicates by text and only on Sunday afternoon. It just gets real personal real fast to actually make the work. You all are nodding, you totally get it. So whenever we have this mapping conversation, it sort of, for me, it tends to blow up really quickly or narrow down really quickly, and getting to a place of understanding what it is we really want to map feels like the first step. Like, what is really, really important for this group to collaborate on together when we want to map something. And that may or may not be routes. It may be existence of facilities or existence of folks who share the same values, who are producing and making in the facilities and our food hubs. Like, we sort of touch on this now and again. So I don't really know what the answer is, but I feel like we have a big scoping problem that that would take some time to get through as well before we could actually do good work and then say, yeah, I think we can keep this updated, because we have to define what it is. I think that's where I get, and I'll be honest, like I get a little overwhelmed when I think about how do we get to that point of having properly scoped for the whole state what it is we want to map. That's a whole project.
Yeah, and I think one other piece of it is, I can't remember, I think Carrie, you touched on this earlier, but that piece of like the routes and the days not matching up is a big hiccup that we've run into frequently with a lot of different routes. So, some sort of, like bringing the folks that do want to work together on this to really think through, to Ken's point in the chat, a strategic plan, which might involve needing to shift some of the days that we do certain functions to make an efficient route flow in the ways that it needs to, just because of the distance or the where the equipment and things might line up. So I don't know.
I don't, you sounded a little sad at the end, and I don't think we should sound sad about it. It's, what we're doing is we're talking about how really, really complex this is. We're talking about building or rebuilding a food system that matches our values and matches the world that we want to see together. And we have to do that because the prevailing food system is not that. And everything in that system has been aligned and funded for many, many, many years to just shoot food across the nation really quickly and really, really efficiently. And it's lost track of all the values that we care about. So we're a bunch of little tiny organizations that have figured out scrappily how to do the things we do. And now we're talking about trying to do those things together. And as it turns out, it's really hard to change a day of operation because it changes your entire week of operation. I see a lot of nodding heads there. And so, this idea of like mapping days and times and whatnot, that's part of this. Wow, this is a scoping project to even get to mapping. There is a body of work that is scoping what is important to this group to understand so that we can then map it. Ankle kickers. Yes, Christy Athens, we are ankle kickers, ankle biters, but we're pretty good at it.
And I would say a good resource. I know a lot of people on this call also dual in the farm to school world, but using those regional hubs as resources for people who are mapping distribution to schools and other areas. Schools do have funding to pay for distribution and things like that. So I know a lot of regional hub coordinators are thinking through that. So a lot of people in this call are also serving as that. So good resources for thinking about these things.
I'm going to ask the group the question, does this idea of scoping the mapping problem, understanding what we want to map, and then moving towards mapping, does that feel like a high value use of this group's time and energy at this time? If we were to figure out how to find funding to do that work, are there people in this group that have capacity to participate in that work?
Yeah, hi Sydney, this is Laura on Joe's screen over here with Kristen.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yes, and I'm not sure that mapping in and of itself really encompasses what I would idealize in my perfect world. I really would like to have some funds to hire a software developer or programmer to build an app that we could use in real time to keep routes updated, and or else I think, like we were talking about in the beginning of the meeting, things become static really quickly. So I would really like to see this actualized, not just as a map, but as a service-based app that has mapping capability. And also the other part of this that I toy with in my own mind as I'm trying to visualize a perfect world, which is a wonderful place to hang out. It's how, if we all have these part-time needs for transportation, that none of it really, nobody really needs a $100,000 asset 100% of the time. Is there a business that can be supported through our work and through our funding that really does nothing but provide that third-party service to this network? And to Kristen's point, to other businesses that are working in local foods, because the distribution companies that I've worked with in the past and that I've been familiar with haven't been successful. But I think that was a different time. There are more of us now, there's more products moving now, there's more visibility around this work, and it may be time to revisit that. So that's what I'd like to think about.
That is so next level to think of, like, I don't know, a parent distribution company throughout the state serving these orgs. I love it. I love that level of thinking. Somebody had an ask for Hannah. Christy Athens, can we have Hannah talk more about what she's thinking? Hannah, you had a thought and Christy wants it.
Hey. Hi. Yeah, I mean, it's, it's so interesting, right? Hearing all the presentations, and you guys are so focused on vegetables and maybe local meats, but just thinking, and Kristen said it too, but there's all these product makers that one are like driving around themselves like crazy, dropping stuff off around whatever town they're in, and then shipping a lot also, even like locally. But then the real hard part of the distributors, they're sort of like two players, and they're really, really harmful to a food business's business model, particularly in cash flow, and how they just take a lot of fees and spoilage, and it's a big headache. And so a lot of people, just opt not to work with them, or then they like raise funds to work with them, etc. But there's a need there as well to have distribution options and alternatives, but it has to be a coordinated effort that everyone needs to like jump on board with together, right? Like, yeah, it doesn't seem to work like onesie twosies, and you have to get some retailers involved as well. So
to Hannah's point, most of us here are primarily serving local producers, farmers, ranchers, and maybe we have some services. Some of us have commercial kitchens, but we're not deeply involved in consumer packaged good, or what a lot of us call value added folks. Maybe we offer them some business supports, but we're not doing as much movement of their product, and we're not as organized around serving their needs. But if we're really talking about logistics, that is absolutely region to region logistics. That is absolutely a group of folks that we should be including in the conversation, because they have many of the same needs, and they also can't fill up an entire truck with their business. So there's some real alignment in need there. Other questions or commentary? on distribution. Going. All right, hold your peace on it. Do we have burning questions, or do we want to go back to SNAP as the burning question? Does anyone have a burning question for the day? Oh gosh, Joe. Uberizing. Oh, it's Shin that's Uberizing. I like it. It's kind of a cool idea.
I will say one of the options that I looked at first was using Dash Delivery to deliver our CSA boxes, but they didn't want to do it. So I just threw it out there. I was looking at all options when we started. They just didn't want to do it.
Hi,
Does
everybody.
anybody? Go ahead, Selkat.
Hi, still Kat from the North Coast Food Web. Just one thing, we are currently in talks with Andy Catalana, more so than myself, but talks with a company called Slurpalicious that does some local food deliveries around our area. And so we're trying to see if they will be a possible option for us to make some deliveries with CSA and some of our online orders on Thursdays and take them into Washington as well. And so that's in the works, and I can update more as it comes, but just people reaching out to all kind of the options available. That definitely is one that we are maybe even close on. So something to consider.
Yeah. I'll be excited to hear how that works for you if you're able to get it off the ground. I know some folks have had some success with third-party delivery and other folks have not. And I think it's region by region and provider by provider. Burning questions. I'm willing to dig into SNAP with our last half hour.
Hannah's got one. And
I see.
Who does?
I see one from Hannah.
Oh,
about
Hannah,
my
please.
refrigerator. Yeah, so I have a CoolBot. I have a walk-in cooler. It's 6x8, and I can fill it. We support about 65 to 75 CSA boxes a week in there, and it is packed. Like I can't even step in the door. I have to pull buckets of flowers out. I know you're not supposed to keep flowers and vegetables in the same cooler, but we don't have a choice. So it all gets pushed in there. So it's a lot, but we use it all.
What other questions do we have or commentary do we have?
Carrie, why are we not supposed to keep flowers and vegetables together? I've never heard that one.
Oh, it has to do with the ethylene that is the ripening hormone that causes food products or vice versa. Your food products that emit a lot of ethylene will cause your flowers to deteriorate quick, or vice versa. Your flowers will cause your food to ripen faster and deteriorate. So you're not, there's nothing food safety issues
It's not a
that I'm
safety
aware
thing,
of.
got it.
It's just about post-harvest preservation in the cooler.
Thanks.
Other questions? Do we want to dig into SNAP a little bit? SNAP is a terrifying topic to me because I feel like it's never ending in how difficult it seems to be, no matter how much we talk about it. But I'm totally willing to go there.
I have a quick question. I
Yeah,
guess
Sarah.
back to kind of what I was talking about with like starting the conversation with your organization around like your values, around, how you vet farms, and like we have a directory on our website, which is very inclusive of local producers and does not include it. They don't have to be necessarily part of the online market. But we've run into some conversations about like, okay, there's a new local ice cream vendor, but do they need to be sourcing local milk to be part of the directory? And like just things like that. Where, yeah, I'm just curious, even when it comes to that, like regional distribution and just talking about just your values around what farms are included, just what that has looked like for you all coming up with those values and how you keep those in place. Because it's something I know we kind of talked about it, but we haven't really sat down and had like a full team conversation about it. So I was just curious if anyone has thoughts on that.
Sarah, what's your mission? What's Klamath Grown's mission? I think whenever you're having that conversation, whether you're having it as a group or you're having it with your constituents, understanding what your mission is will help you divine the correct answer. So I think you're asking a question that I think we all ask ourselves, like, is this vendor, does it make sense? Does the pickle vendor that is sourcing everything from California make sense in our organization because they're a local brand? You know, and I think all of us will interpret that differently based on what our mission is. But I think that would be the place to start.
Fruit Roots had that exact conversation a while back, I know.
How did do you know what sort of the result of that conversation was? Like what you looked at and what you decided, how you decided to go forward?
From what I heard, they just looked at the mission and, which is to build a robust and equitable food system in Tillamook County through community engagement, education, farm producer support, and financial assistance. And so what they decided, I think that the mission really was, access to local food. And that could be, yes, farmers, but I think we heavily focus a bit more on farmers, especially with our move to where we are, where we're not in as high level retail location as we were before. But also still have a variety of shelf stable products so that people can really build a meal and build a weekly planned meals with what they can get at Food Roots. And that way we can be as incorporative as possible with a bunch of different people in our community. We're just supporting farmers, but we're also supporting local independent people. And so that really increases a community engagement, which is one of the foundational building blocks, I think, of Food Roots.
That's great. Thank you. Twyla.
Hi, sorry, y'all. Oh, there I am. Hi, I'm here. We often have this question or conversation. We have it pretty frequently. We're actually going to have our staff retreat in August, and one of the big pieces of information that we will be talking about is this. But what it comes down to is we take everything on a case-by-case basis. If we have a farmer, or not a farmer, a value-added producer who wants to make pickles, like as an example, and that person is sourcing all of their cucumbers from California, that doesn't align with our mission when you can grow cucumbers here. So we would probably not have that product in our marketplace because there would be another local producer who was making a product out of locally produced cucumbers, and we would prioritize having that product in our market. However, if the product is not able to be grown here, for example, we have a local spice producer. Aleppo chilies don't grow on the Oregon coast in the quantity of which you would need to make a dried Aleppo chili spice. So we make an exception for this producer who outsources his Aleppo chilies from, a completely different state. And so that product is produced here in Seaside. It is a local product made by a local producer, and that particular product cannot be sourced locally. So that's kind of how we gauge it on a case-by-case basis. We also do the same thing for our 100-mile sourcing. everything that we sell in our market, for the most part, comes within 100 miles of Astoria Food Hub downtown. But if it's 115 miles and it still aligns with our mission, we will make an exception. If it's 150 miles and it aligns with our mission, we'll make an exception. If it's a product that is grown in Central Oregon and we can't grow that product here within 100 miles, we might make an exception. So we have a set of values and a, system that we loosely stand by, and we take everything on a case by case basis. If that's helpful at all.
I think that idea of like, we have a set of values and we apply them, like that's the idea that you'll want to start grappling with as an organization, is really practicing articulating your values and then testing them, because products and producers will test your values all the time. And I'm saying that and it sounds like very sassy, but it's not, I'm not meaning to be really sassy about it. It's just somebody new shows up with a product that maybe only half aligns with your values. And so you'll, with everyone else's products that are in your lineup, but maybe it makes sense because it's something special, something new, something important to add to your mix, whatever it is. And so the more you learn how to articulate your values, when you have those tests, the more you as an organization are able to produce an answer that is consistent with your values. But definitely understanding your values is an ongoing conversation in your organization. And it really works best when everyone in your organization is participating in those conversations, understands those conversations, whether they are somebody who is, just answering phones to somebody who is, developing your programs. If those values are really embedded and you really talk about them a lot, they are part of every one of your meetings, it becomes easier to pass the test when you get tested. Hannah, you had a question or a commentary or both.
I have definitely commentary. I just wanted to share from, the product maker perspective. What I've seen a lot is that people, they don't all come in to, local food or making food from the same perspective, and often are just inspired by a recipe or something they made at home, and they haven't yet learned about alternative sourcing. And so just to take an educational approach and and really lean into the connections. Like, I just have this belief that, if we welcome in someone who might not be, fully aligned on sourcing, but they get to meet farmers and connect and start to be part of that ecosystem, they're going, there's going to be shift that arises in learning through that community and that connection. And yeah, I had another, I was just going to share a thought about, like, I do label reviews for products, and there was one recently that they had used a lot of ingredients just with the ingredients that wouldn't really vibe for a lot of people. And I just shared with them, now that people can see your ingredients, you might want to think about this more, more fully, and just from a really compassionate place. And they went forward and shifted them, those kind of moments, but creating space for it rather than like hard boundaries, giving people time to change.
Yeah, I think too, a lot of the organizations that are on this call have an economic development function within their communities, or that's part of their missions and goals. And so it can be really reasonable to apply that lens to a product. If you're working with small makers and it's not feasible, it may not be feasible for them to source from local producers for one reason or another. Oftentimes supply and price are big reasons. If not, it's just not the right product at all. It still can make sense for a product to show up in your hub if it is you're supporting a local brand, you've got an owner operator brand, like that can make really good sense within the framework of economic development. And I'm not, I don't know off the top of my head, Klamath Grown's, big picture mission. I've really only worked with you all directly around kind of helping develop a budget. So I'm not as embedded in what your mission is specifically, but you can really take a holistic view of your mission and apply it in the ways that make the most sense in your community. And what makes sense in your community and with your organization may not make sense in another community and another organization. And that's totally reasonable. But the real trick is to practice those conversations. Really, these mission conversations should be really regular. They really should be a part of any regular meeting. You should be talking about your mission. So when you lose sight of the mission is when it all gets very sad and your community gets very mad at you. Other questions or comments on this? This is a great conversation, you guys. Oh, Carrie dropped some guidelines in that might be helpful for you, Sarah. And Twyla is leaving us. Heartbreak City.
There was also a question by Hannah about how will we avoid all of our producers producing the same thing at the same time. And so I put a link in with we have an interactive crop planner. Basically, we all meet via Zoom in January before we buy seed and start propagating. So we can kind of see what everybody's plan is, and it also kind of reveals where there's gaps. Each of us has like our own little microclimates, and we are successful at growing different things. So we kind of just divide that up, and we know that melons are going to come from Stacy, and strawberries are going to come from me, and then we don't have a lot of duplication. So it is really working well for us.
I like that we have some drop-in folks on the end of other people's phones. This is great. Other questions from this group, or we probably have time for one new question. If we have a new question, and I'm toggling between screens, so somebody yell at me if I'm missing you. Is that all? All right. We have about 10 minutes, and we actually have a fair amount of new people on this call. I would love to do a super fast round of introductions. Who you are, where you are, what org you work for. Nothing else, because we won't get through everybody if we have any words. I'm Sydney DeLuna. I coordinate the Oregon Food Hub Network, and I'm located in Central Oregon. Lindsay, why don't you go?
I'm Lindsay Ward. I'm with Food Roots in Tillamook County.
I'll go next because I'm the other Lindsay and I wasn't sure if you're referring to. That's okay. I'm Lindsay Grosvenor. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Program Manager with Oregon Food Bank, the Ontario branch.
I'm Maggie Michaels. I'm the Regional Program Manager for Kitchen Sink Strategies. I live in Portland, but I'm currently in Newport.
I'm Emily Cordo. I'm the new Interim Executive Director at Food Roots.
Teva, why don't you go?
I'm in Northeast Oregon with Genuine Malawi County Provisions.
Silcat Ra, Astoria, Oregon, North Coast Food Web. I'm the Producer Support Manager.
I think I heard you say my name's me. I'm Devin Needleman. I am with Black Food Sovereignty Coalition and I'm based in Portland. And I will pick on Adriana.
Hi, Adriana, she, her pronouns. I'm with Oregon Food Bank in Portland, and I will pass it to Erin. Oh, there's two of you. Erin made the
I didn't hear which last name you said. I'm just gonna go. I'm Erin Marr. I work for Agricultural Connections Cooperative. I use they them pronouns. I'm in Central Oregon, and I'll pass it to the other Erin.
That's you, Erin Maidlow. Oh, she's just pretending to be on this call.
I'll
How
cover
about Sarah?
Erin.
Okay, great.
I'm Genevieve. I'm with the Willamette Farm and Food Coalition and the Whitaker Community Market in Eugene. Her. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. Great to see the new faces. How about Maya Rose?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maya. I'm a business coach with Business Impact Northwest. I'm usually based in Portland, but right now I'm in Ashland. And I'll pick Jasmine.
Got some listeners in. Jude, how about you?
Good, wait, I'm in Vancouver, Washington, the greater suburb of Portland, and I'm working on an Eat Local First campaign with Washington, across Washington State.
Awesome. Sundance. We've got guest visitors, y'all.
Yeah, hi, from the Alaska Food Policy Council and Sundance Visitor up in Homer, Alaska. We're doing a food hub working group too.
How about we do a round robin about all the folks on Joe Sewell's phone?
Hi, I'm Joe Sewell, Central Coast Food Web.
Hi, I'm Laura, Equina Lab, Central Coast Food Web, Local Ocean.
Kristen Penner, North Coast Commons.
We're here in Newport. Hi Maggie, you're here in Newport too.
How about Willie?
My name is Willie, out in Rockwood or Gresham, kind of all things food. Primarily, we're doing a food hub and possible development projects around the food manufacturing and such.
Awesome. I am losing track of who Bobby Wilson. I don't think we've heard from you yet.
Hey, and I can also introduce Erin. She's probably multitasking, but Erin and I work together at Umpqua Valley Farm to School. I'm also on the board of the Josephine County Farm Collective with Carrie, and I have a small farm in Myrtle Creek, Oregon.
Awesome, thanks. Ann Eldridge. How about Michelle Yasuke? Michelle, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
It's not, that's not her last name. It's funny you say that. I joked about it. It's Dr. Michelle Rose, Yasti Farm.
Yes,
so it's her company. Right. Yeah, it's more farming and such that she does, and food boxes and that side of the industry.
Thanks for introing her. It's I think
Yeah.
Michelle's first time on this call with all of us, and I'm happy to see her.
Yeah.
And then
Hi, this is Anne. Sorry, I had
great.
my phone froze. I've been in Ashland for 18 years, but I've been doing food hubs now in Colorado for the last 5 summers, and really interested in what's going on now with this new food distribution group. I'm super excited.
Great. And then Kiara, I don't know if you're really here, if you're just listening in, but if you're here, you want to introduce yourself. And then did I miss anyone?
I'm here. I'm gonna go. My name's Kiara Kashuba. I'm the director of the Gorge Farmer Collective, and we are a farmer-owned cooperative up in the Hood River area, Columbia River Gorge, Washington, and Oregon.
Awesome. Shin?
Hi, y'all. My name is Shin. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the network coordinator at OCFSN. And I guess before folks drop off, I wanted to share in case any of y'all are also in the Veggie RX realm or interested in that. We're hosting a in-person 2-day convening in the Portland area in August. So I will also drop that RSVP link in here if anyone's in also works with that. Good to see everyone.
And then Hannah, I think we didn't get your intro.
I had my hand raised at the time, so I got missed. I'm Hannah. I work with Community Co-Pack and the PNW Food and Beverage Group with packaged food makers. And
I'm Adam. I'm the new of Old Moon Farm, just north of Silverton.
surprise.
Awesome. Was that everybody? Did I miss anybody? Welcome to everybody who is new, and thank you so much for joining us. This is a great discussion. It's a lot of fun. Carrie and Sarah, thank you so much for sharing what you're doing and kicking off the discussion for the day. It's great. All right, y'all. See you next month.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.